My name is Eleanor Vance, and for 8 years, I poured my lifeblood into Global Nexus Logistics. 8 years of late nights, early mornings, skipped holidays, and a dedication that bordered on the obsessive. I wasn't just an employee, I was the silent engine, the unseen architect behind the seamless flow of goods that kept the world turning for a company valued at over $3 billion. I knew every intricate vein, every critical artery, every tiny capillary of that colossal logistical network. I knew its strengths, its weaknesses, and more importantly, its hidden vulnerabilities. Little did I know, this intimate knowledge would one day become both my curse and my ultimate weapon. From the moment I walked through the gleaming glass doors of their corporate headquarters, fresh out of college with a degree in supply chain management, I was captivated. The sheer scale of it all was intoxicating. Global Nexus wasn't just shipping packages, they were orchestrating complex movements of raw materials, finished products, and critical components across continents. They were the invisible hand guiding the global economy. And I, a tiny cog, felt an immense pride in being part of something so monumental. I started at the bottom, of course, but I climbed fast. Not through flashy presentations or office politics, but through sheer, unadulterated competence. I devoured every manual, memorized every protocol, and intuitively understood the system in a way no one else seemed to. I could see patterns where others saw chaos, anticipate bottlenecks before they formed, and devise solutions with an almost preternatural instinct. My colleagues respected me, my immediate supervisors relied on me, and even the higher-ups occasionally sought my input on particularly thorny issues. My role eventually evolved into a senior logistics coordinator, but that title barely scratched the surface of what I actually did. I was the keeper of the master schedule, the one who understood how every single freight movement, every warehouse inventory update, every customs clearance, and every last-mile delivery interconnected. I had developed custom macros, refined old algorithms, and even built a few proprietary scripts that, unbeknownst to anyone else, optimized critical data flows by an astonishing margin. These weren't official company tools. They were my personal innovations, born out of a desire for perfection and efficiency, subtly integrated into the existing infrastructure. They were my secret garden, tended with care, making the sprawling beast of Global Nexus purr like a kitten. My boss, Mr. Sterling, a man whose ambition far outstripped his actual understanding of the company's operational backbone, simply saw the smooth operations and took all the credit. He was a master of delegation and superficial charm, but when it came to the nitty-gritty of logistics, he was utterly clueless. He managed by intimidation and a constant fear of rocking the boat, which meant that my quiet efficiency was his greatest asset, even if he didn't fully comprehend it. Then came the 80th birthday of my grandmother, Nana Rose. She was the bedrock of my family, a woman who had weathered every storm with grace and an unwavering smile. 80 years was a milestone, a monumental occasion, and she lived 3 states away. I hadn't seen her in person in over a year, and I desperately wanted to be there. I'd been planning this trip for months, saving up my vacation days, meticulously arranging coverage for my tasks. I put in my request for a long weekend off, Friday to Monday, 6 months in advance. 6 months! It was well within company policy, well within the reasonable time frame for such a request. I even offered to work remotely for part of it, to be on call if anything truly catastrophic happened. I genuinely believed I had everything covered. Mr. Sterling, however, had other ideas. When I approached him for the final approval, he barely looked up from his computer. "Eleanor," he grunted, his voice laced with the usual impatience, "we're in a critical quarter. Q3 is always tight. You know this. We can't afford any disruptions." "Mr. Sterling, I put this request in half a year ago. I've cross-trained Sarah and Mark on all my essential duties, and I'll have my laptop with me if anything urgent comes up. It's my grandmother's 80th birthday. This is incredibly important to me." I tried to keep my voice steady, but a tremor of anxiety ran through me. I rarely asked for anything, and I always delivered. He finally lifted his gaze, his eyes cold and devoid of empathy. Important to you, perhaps, but the company comes first, Eleanor, always. We're short-staffed as it is. I can't approve it. You'll have to reschedule your family event. He dismissed me with a wave of his hand, turning back to his screen as if the conversation was over. My heart sank. Reschedule my grandmother's 80th birthday? The absurdity was infuriating. I tried again, pleading, explaining the significance, the impossibility of rescheduling. I even offered to take unpaid leave, anything. His response was a chilling. Look, Eleanor, if you can't prioritize your responsibilities here, perhaps this isn't the right place for you. The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, a suffocating blanket. I walked away, defeated, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The choice was stark. Miss this once-in-a-lifetime moment with my grandmother, or risk my job. For years, I had chosen the job, but this time, something inside me snapped. Nana Rose deserved better. I deserved better. I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would go. I would take the long weekend, come what may. I left a polite, professional email informing Mr. Sterling that I would be taking my pre-approved vacation days as per company policy, and that I had ensured all my critical tasks were either completed or delegated. I hit send, my finger trembling slightly, and immediately felt a strange mix of fear and defiance. I spent that weekend with Nana Rose, celebrating her incredible life. Her smile was worth every ounce of anxiety. I watched her blow out the candles, her eyes sparkling with 80 years of wisdom and love, and I knew I had made the right choice. But the peace was short-lived. The moment I returned to my desk on Tuesday morning, the air in the office felt heavy, charged. Mr. Sterling was waiting. He didn't even bother with pleasantries. My office, Eleanor, now. His voice was low, dangerous. I followed him, my stomach churning. He didn't offer me a seat. He stood behind his desk, looming, his face a mask of barely contained fury. So, you decided to defy a direct order, did you? To prioritize your personal whims over the needs of this company. Mr. Sterling, I had pre-approved vacation time. I followed all protocols. I even offered to be available. My voice was barely a whisper. Don't you dare lecture me on protocols, Eleanor. Your absence caused a significant backlog in the Q3 freight projections. Do you know how much that costs us? Do you have any idea the kind of message that sends to your colleagues? He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. You are insubordinate. You are unreliable. Effective immediately, your employment with Global Nexus Logistics is terminated. Clear out your desk. Security will escort you out. The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Fired, after 8 years, for attending my grandmother's 80th birthday. The injustice was a searing brand on my soul. My mind reeled. Panic began to set in. How would I pay rent? My student loans? My perfectly constructed life, built on years of diligent work, was crumbling around me because of one man's petty tyranny. As I numbly gathered my personal belongings, the stares of my former colleagues felt like daggers. Humiliation washed over me, thick and suffocating. Security, a burly man named Frank, watched me with an expression of pity, which somehow felt worse than Sterling's contempt. As I walked out, the gleaming glass doors that once symbolized opportunity now felt like the gates of a prison I had just been unjustly expelled from. The first few days were a blur of tears, rage, and despair. I applied for jobs, but the market was tight, and the sting of betrayal was still too fresh. I replayed Sterling's words over and over, each syllable a fresh wound. Unreliable, insubordinate. Me? The one who had dedicated her entire young adult life to that company? The one who had practically memorized the entire global supply chain? The more I stewed, the more a different kind of thought began to form, a dark, simmering ember of an idea. It started small, a flicker of what if, then grow into a roaring blaze. I spent hours staring at my laptop, not for job applications, but for something far more insidious. I began to revisit the system, not as an employee, but as an architect contemplating a sabotage. I knew every piece of their infrastructure, the outdated legacy systems clinging to life, the patchwork of third-party integrations, the custom scripts I'd written that were now integral but completely undocumented, known only to me. My mind, usually focused on optimization, now saw only vulnerabilities, choke points, and critical single points of failure. I saw the entire $3 billion empire as a house of cards, intricately built, but with a few key cards that, if removed, would bring the whole structure crashing down. The idea was terrifying. It was illegal. It was morally ambiguous. But the image of Sterling's sneering face, the memory of Frank's pitying gaze, and the burning injustice of being discarded like trash fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about exposing the arrogance and incompetence that festered at the top. It was about showing them that the people who actually understood how things worked were not disposable. It was about demonstrating the true cost of treating your most dedicated employees with such callous disregard. My plan wasn't to destroy data or introduce malware. That was too crude, too easily traced, and too obviously malicious. My plan was far more elegant, far more insidious. I would freeze them. I would make their entire global logistics network seize up, not with a bang, but with a whimper, a slow, agonizing paralysis. I would exploit the very optimizations I had created. My custom scripts, designed to streamline data flow and prioritize critical shipments, had an undocumented failsafe, a kill switch of sorts, built in case of system overloads or erroneous data inputs. It wasn't designed for malicious intent, but as a last resort to prevent catastrophic failures by pausing non-essential operations. Only I knew the specific sequence, the precise data anomaly, the exact timing that would trigger this failsafe across their entire network. It wouldn't delete anything, but it would halt everything. It would make their system believe it was in an emergency state, requiring manual verification for every single transaction, every single movement, every single data packet. I spent weeks poring over old network diagrams, recalling obscure configuration files, and mentally rehearsing the sequence. I didn't need access to their servers. I had built an external trigger point years ago, a redundant ping system that allowed me to monitor global data integrity from my home computer. It was innocuous, a tiny backdoor for system diagnostics, but it was enough. I would inject a carefully crafted, seemingly benign data package, a phantom instruction, into that ping system. It would mimic a critical system error, cascade through the network, and activate my hidden failsafe across all their major hubs simultaneously. The system would then essentially put itself into an emergency lockdown, requiring human approval for every single operation. Imagine every truck, every ship, every plane, every warehouse movement, every customs form, every barcode scan suddenly needing a manual override. Imagine the sheer, unimaginable bottleneck. It would be a logistical nightmare of epic proportions, a death by 1,000 paper cuts. The day I chose was a Monday, the busiest day for global logistics. The air was thick with a humid summer heat, mirroring the tension building within me. My hands were clammy as I sat at my old desk, the very same one I used to use for my global nexus work. I took a deep breath, the metallic taste of fear and anticipation on my tongue. I opened the terminal, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. There was a moment of profound hesitation. Was I really going to do this? Was I going to risk everything for a moment of vindictive satisfaction? The image of Nana Rose's joyful face, juxtaposed with Mr. Sterling's cold, dismissive stare, solidified my resolve. Yes, I was. With a silent prayer, I typed the sequence, a string of commands that felt both alien and intimately familiar. Each keystroke was deliberate, precise. I watched the console, heart pounding, as the commands executed. A small green "Success" message appeared. It was done. The phantom instruction was injected. I closed the terminal, shut down my laptop, and took another shaky breath. There was no immediate explosion, no dramatic collapse, just a profound, unsettling silence. The world outside my window looked exactly the same, yet I knew, with chilling certainty, that somewhere, deep within the digital veins of global nexus logistics, chaos was quietly beginning to bloom. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of nervous anticipation, glued to the news and industry forums. Nothing. Had it failed? Had I overestimated my own capabilities? Just as despair started to creep in, a small, obscure industry blog posted a cryptic message.